There you're unmuted.
Hi, everybody. We will get started in just a couple of minutes. Please make sure your speakers and microphone muted. Otherwise, I think we can go ahead and unmute.
Unmuted.
So thank you, everybody, for coming today. We are going to go ahead and get started. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we gather today on the ancestral homelands of the Nisenan people. Sacramento was a gathering place for many local tribes who have lived throughout the Central Valley and the foothills for generations and were the original stewards of this land. We would like to acknowledge the Southern Maidu people to the north, the Valley and Plains Miwok peoples to the south of the American River, and the Patwin-Wintun peoples to the west of the Sacramento River. Please join me in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude for our Indigenous neighbors and for their enduring care and protection of our shared lands and waterways. I will now provide a safety briefing for our in-person attendees, followed by welcoming remarks from our Education and Outreach Committee. If there is an emergency, such as a fire, earthquake, natural disaster, or a medical emergency, please call 911 and give them as much information as possible, including the address, which is 715 P Street. We are on the second floor in room 301, and the front desk should be alerted if emergency vehicles will be arriving. If you feel shaking or get an alert, protect yourself from falling objects, and if possible, drop where you are, cover your head and neck, shelter or seek an interior wall, and hold on until the shaking stops. If needed, there are fire extinguishers in the hallway. And during an evacuation, proceed down the stairs outside the doors at the end of the hall and exit the building to the left or right of the stairs. The evacuation zone is at Franklin D. Roosevelt Park on the southeast corner of 9th and P Streets. Look for the person holding a sign and check in with them so that we can account for everyone. If you require evacuation assistance, please wait at the top of the stairs and have someone notify emergency services. This concludes our safety briefing, and I will now ask Member Johnson to make opening remarks.
Thank you, Jessica. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Again, thank you for joining, and participating in this workshop. My name is Marshall Johnson, I'm co-chair of the statewide education outreach. And I'm here to help serve for the goodness of this organization for the state of California. And so it's a very important part of for the whole structure of success of the underground role here that's slated by Governor. And we want to make sure that everyone goes home safe and the safe practices are implemented. So again, thank you. And forward to working with everybody again.
Member Clausen.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. I'm Travis Clausen, co-chair of this Education and Outreach Committee. My apologies for not being able to be there in person today. But wanted to say I appreciate everybody being on here. I think the education piece is the cornerstone of a good program. I'm excited to be a part of it, and I'm here to help, lend my knowledge and answer questions in any way, but definitely want to encourage as much participation as possible so we can move the needle on this important topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Coughlin. The committee is joined today by Jessica and Alex. You're looking at the screen. Alex is on my right. And on the education outreach team, who will be facilitating and moderating this workshop. Before we get started, I'd like to share some background on the Underground Safety Board. The California Underground Safety Board was created by the DigSafe Act of 2016 to investigate accidents, develop excavation safety standards, and coordinate education outreach programs. It seeks to facilitate communication between excavators and operators of substructure installation, determine the cause of accidents, and enforce California DigSafe law, DigSafe Act. One of the board's objectives is to improve compliance by reaching parties in an effective way. California Government Code subsection 4216.12B1 requires the board to coordinate education and outreach activities that encourage safe excavation practices. Member Clausen will now review today's agenda.
Thank you, Member Johnson. The committee has worked with staff to develop an interactive workshop that builds on the insights shared during the first two workshops of this year. We had to hear from operators and excavators to collaboratively identify the primary contributing factors behind the failure to contact 811 prior to excavation. We're going to share available industry data to validate or challenge assumptions about why people fail to notify 811 before digging, to understand outreach strategies that will effectively address the problem, and examine the current education and outreach efforts look like, what's being communicated, and what gaps may exist in training, guidance, and resources that result in failure to notify 811. To meet these objectives, our agenda includes a review of the key findings from the previous workshops, an introduction to the root cause analysis process, an interactive root cause analysis on the failure to notify 811, an opportunity for the public to present their data, and an opportunity for the public to present samples of their current training materials and a summary of their curriculums. We're here today to work together as an industry to share insights that encourage safe excavation practices. Everyone is invited to contribute their expertise, listen to diverse perspectives, and engage in focused and constructive conversations. We will now move forward on to item 2. Member Johnson will review the previous workshops.
Thank you, Member Clausen. This session is the third in the Coordinated Statewide Education Outreach Workshop Series planned for 2025. Did not participate in the previous workshops. I encourage you to view the recordings on the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety YouTube channel. In the previous meeting, stakeholders identified key issues and agreed to focus this effort on damages related to the absence of an 811 ticket. Based on the feedback, we saw an opportunity to work together to deepen our understanding of the problem and review the content currently being used in the field. So we have a clear picture of what information is already available to the excavators. We will now move on to the item 3. Member Clausen will introduce the root cause analysis process.
We'll be using the root cause analysis activities to learn more about why people do not notify 811. The purpose of a root cause analysis is to focus not just on the problem, but on why it's happening. Defined in the OSHA fact sheet titled "The Importance of Root Cause Analysis During Incident Investigation," a root cause is a fundamental, underlying, system-related reason why an incident occurred that identifies one or more correctable system failures. Today is an opportunity for all of you who are experts in the excavation industry to share your insights. Each experience and observation you share can help us better understand training issues and solutions and foster long-term collaboration. Please remember that this activity is about learning and improving together, not assigning blame. Let's stay focused on the issue at hand. We will now move on to item 4. The education and outreach team will facilitate root cause analysis activities on failure to notify 811 before excavation.
Thank you, members Johnson and Clausen, and thank you to everybody who has joined us today in person and online. Today's workshop will include audience participation in person and remotely, but the public comment process will be a little different than our previous workshops. So for those who are in person, comments will be an open conversation and not a formal question and answer session. Those attending in person who wish to provide a comment can speak when in-person comment is called. And since our online attendees are muted, we will ask that you raise your hand to enter the public comment queue. Webinar attendees can use the raise hand button, and those who have dialed in can dial *5. When your name is called and you are asked to unmute yourself, webinar attendees can use the microphone button to unmute themselves, and those who have dialed in can dial *6. And as a quick note, there's sometimes a small delay when we are going through the unmute process, so please be patient. As I mentioned, wait till your name is called and then unmute yourself to speak. And please provide your name and organization before your comment. Before our first activity, I would like to ask via show of hands how many people plan to participate in agenda items 5 and 6. Item 5 asks the public to present data that they're collecting and analyzing and what that data suggests is the cause of damage. And item 6 asks the public to present their current education and outreach materials and curriculum samples if possible. So we're gonna use a show of hands. So if you are joining via our webinar, this is the time that we would ask you to use the raise hand button. So those instructions that I just went over, either the raise hand button, or if you've dialed in, you'll use *5, and we will do a quick tally of these votes. So first, I would like to ask both in-person and online attendees to raise their hand if they plan to present their data today during item 5. Axel, I will ask you to give me a tally of the hands, if possible.
Michael Worcester.
Okay,
That is the only person that has their hand raised.
okay. We'll give it just another minute in case anybody, an in-person too, yeah,
We have a couple items to share. I'm not sure if it's a full presentation.
that's great. Presentation is probably a little strong of a word, so, that would be great. Okay, Axel, has anybody else raised their hand on the webinar? Okay. Okay, thank you. You can lower all of those hands.
They're
Thank you so much. So we'll do the same process for item 6. So this is, well, I mean, we'll say present education outreach materials, but of course, an open conversation about what your materials look like and how they're being used. There are some prompts about what that conversation can look like that will be included when we get to those sections. So I'll ask in person and online to raise their hands if they plan to participate in this section.
so online, we have Michael Donlin.
Are we looking in the room? For this one?
Which is what we're trying to get.
For item 6, which would be the education and outreach material. Oh, yeah, okay, I thought so. Okay,
We have
Great.
one other online, Michael Worcester.
great. Awesome, and of course, when we get to these items, if anybody at that time would also like to join, that will be available, so we'll make sure that we have time for these items, and thank you to everybody who plans to participate. We can lower those hands. And we will get started for our first activity. So this first activity, we're gonna capture your insights and then, we're gonna capture your insights by breaking down what we know and what we think. We're gonna start by collecting your insights, and then we'll select a few of those insights to go through an analysis process. So based on our previous workshops, what we know is that there is a failure to notify 811, and this causes underground infrastructure damage. And what we'll collect from you is why you think people might fail to notify 811. So one example might be that people think there is a fee for using the 811 service. So we're looking for everybody to just provide a brief description of your insight, similar to this example here. Right now, for this activity, we aren't looking for a further discussion or responses. We're just trying to collect these ideas. And that said, there are no wrong answers. We just ask that you stay focused on this main the topic here, which is why people fail to notify 811. As you provide these insights, Alex is going to be adding them onto the slide so that we can select which ones we're going to analyze and we can prioritize these. So for this activity, we'll start with our in-person comments, followed by our webinar comments. And as a reminder, online attendees, the instructions for entering the public comment queue are on the slide deck if you are joining us on the webinar and can see that. But you can enter the public comment queue at any time by raising your hand or dialing *5. So we'll start with our in-person attendees. So any insights on why people may fail to notify 811?
Well, one thing, so calling me out from USA North 811, one thing I just wanted to, it's kind of a regurgitating a couple of things that were in previous meetings, but I think it's, the time. A lot of people still, half of the people know about 811, the other half don't, that are causing damages. The half that do, they're just proceeding to do it because they gotta get the job done. There's a deadline, there's incentives, and they gotta put pipe in the ground. So you know, think, I think Member Johnson mentioned that in either the first meeting or the second meeting. But then in addition to that, I know, somebody in the room, I think it was Steve Cleaver, mentioned more enforcement. We just came back from Nevada, since we oversee that state as well, or provide the data and center services to them as well. And they have a highly, active regulatory board that, has good relationships with all the excavators and the contract locators, but additionally to the utility members. And if there's something wrong, they're all over it and, submitting, making them pay fines and whatnot. So I think just something has to be done in that aspect. There's always the stick and the carrot, but unfortunately we've tried the carrot for a long time, and I think there needs to be just slightly more stick.
So a few things I wrote down. So one thing that you mentioned is it's time consuming. So people may fail to notify 811 because of the time it takes. So when you say time consuming, is that for like it adds to their days to their, project time, right? Is that kind of? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Essentially, well, they're just trying to get the job done.
Yeah.
Additionally, in a different bucket, there's a lot of landscapers and fencing, smaller companies that it goes back to that time and resources. They just need to get the job done, or else they're gonna lose that bid from the homeowner. So.
Yeah. So we'll dive into the whys in a minute, but the time that it takes, right? Okay. One other thing you mentioned was, you said like half know about the process and half don't. So if we were to break this down for this activity, if you were to say, half don't know, is there a certain stakeholder group that you would bucket into that, so that for this insight, we could just say, maybe this stakeholder group has low awareness of the process?
Yeah, it's mostly the homeowners, DIYs.
Okay. So, our insight team homeowners have low awareness of the 811 process. Okay.
On that dot with USA North, I think another group is like Colin mentioned, the smaller, maybe mom and pop shops, right? Maybe family-owned businesses, landscapers, fencers. They, I think, have a low awareness of 811. I think most of the big scale excavation organizations are aware of the 811 process. So the no calls from the excavator category are, I think, more common in the smaller excavation outfits.
Okay. So we have certain stakeholder groups who have a low awareness of the process. And then the other one we want to capture is that it's time consuming when people are on a project deadline. Okay.
Colin, can I ask you a clarity question? When you talked about homeowners and DIYers, that's just a true homeowner, or are you also in that category? When you say homeowners, is that a landscaper?
Oh, no.
So for example, like a landscaper, that is a CSLB license, it's C27. So when you say homeowners, are you saying a homeowner who hired a licensed contractor and just had lack of awareness that licensed contractor was supposed to call, and the licensed contractor didn't tell them? Or when you say homeowners, is it just homeowners, like I'm planting roses in my backyard and hitting gas?
Yeah, so the homeowner doing the work, or they're renting and doing improvements on the property, anything like that. We segment that just because, if they call us, we grill them pretty hard. It's the responsibility of whoever's doing the work, right? The California government code. So if we get any hints of that, we're like, we try to tell them, hey, your contractor should be calling this in, because all the communication goes to them. We don't want to play the game of telephone where it's going to the homeowner from the utility member responses, the positive responses, and the homeowner has to relay that back. Things get lost in translation. And I think that's why Spirit of Law had that in there.
And when you are gathering this information, where is this information coming from? Is it coming in from when they call and say, hey, I hit something and that, or is it from doing outreach and this is information you're collecting anecdotally? Just what documents or information is creating that belief?
little bit of both. Definitely, I mean, it's a little bit of art, because nobody has the magic bullet, unfortunately. We wish we could, as Matt mentioned, we really want to reach out and get in front of those smaller contractors, but they're not the ones that are part of UConn or AGC, any of those larger groups that have safety directors, because they're at that point, it's the smaller companies, maybe under 10 employees, that are really difficult to reach out to.
But yeah, the data on no call damages for us is tricky because, most of our damage data comes from people who make a notification to 811, right? They maybe made a ticket and then they're calling in to report damage. We don't get as many no call damage reports yet. Typically, if the homeowner or a small scale contractor, or really anyone, if they damage a line and never called 811, their first call is almost always to the operator. So the operator, has, I think, a better ability to log that data. So we kind of base a lot of our insights and no call damages. We're leaning on our utility members and kind of conversations, of understanding where those no call damages are coming from. So from those conversations, we hear that homeowners are a big part of that, right? Who are digging by themselves in the property. Maybe smaller outfits, or smaller landscapers, fencers, those are kind of the big no call hitters. But in terms of hard numbers, we don't really have that data on our end just because they don't really notify us. They don't make that ticket.
We do if they created a ticket originally with us, but if they did not call and damage, we just don't have any record of that, unfortunately.
That's helpful, thank you, because we're running a no 811 pilot in Southern California. And so we have quite a few active investigations and most of them are at homes. However, none of them are a homeowner. It's a homeowner who has hired a landscaper, someone to build an accessory dwelling unit in their backyard, someone that put in a fence. And so we don't have that data to share today, but anecdotally, I can tell you, we do ask, did you know you needed a ticket? And if they said yes, we ask, why didn't you get one? And what we've heard people say, we're not digging to the depth of install. So for some reason, there's this weird belief out there that unless you're digging really deep, you don't need a ticket. And everybody is always surprised when they hit something. And we've had several investigations where people have said, I wasn't digging to 18 inches.
Yeah, you hear something very similar to that. So, and that was something I was going to bring up in this conversation is the depth, right? A lot of people believe that there's some depth number that they have to hit in order to call any ticket in.
So for our insights, Alex, if we can adjust the first one so that we've identified these homeowners specifically as DIYers. And we can add a third insight that is references the depth. And so I'll ask for the room to help me, define the way we should have the insight. So is it that people are unaware of what the depth they need to call on, or is it that they are just unaware that moving any earth?
There's a belief, we've had it said so many times that for some reason there is a belief that if you're shallow digging, you may not need a ticket.
Got it.
And I don't know where that got supplanted in people's education. I'd like to figure it out so we could go in and change that. But that is a common belief that we hear a lot.
You gotta keep back in time, because every facility had that they needed to put their facility. First started this years ago, and then over time with erosion and people wanted to get deeper to get away from things, folks said, okay, well, they're down 18, 24, 18 inches, whatever the case may be. 18 inches is probably the lowest, and I'll just dig in 6, so I'm not gonna hit anything. But over time with erosion and all of that, that's part of the reason of it.
I think another
Folks think of that way.
I think another thing too, from a marketing standpoint, when you see the results of 811, especially with margins, right? I think a lot of homeowners associate that with construction or like professional excavation projects. So I think the view or perspective, especially my friends I talk to who own homes, they often think it's just for, you know, professional excavators, right? That's kind of a service that needs building. It's for those big, you know, really big projects, and it looks very industrial at times. So I think in terms of our outward messaging, it's helpful to try and tweak, you know, our creatives, you know, our copy, call to actions to really make it, you know, obvious to homeowners because this is for anyone who's thinking, right? Especially for those smaller projects. So
we can capture that insight, as maybe the general public associates the markings with professional, construction. Okay,
I don't think, just one thing to add, PG&E, it might have been a year ago. I don't know, Steve Cleaver's online, he can probably speak more to it, but they did, some research and they were starting to do communication and outreach on digging is digging. Like to try to combat that myth, right? That urban legend of like, oh, I'm just going, you know, 12 inches, I shouldn't anything, or 18, whatever it may be, to try to combat that.
even that term excavation, so I know in a lot of our homeowner marketing, we don't use the word excavation because that word alone kind of points people to professionals. So we try to keep it digging or a digging project, different area, something like that to kind of make it seem less of a big deal. Yes, if that makes sense.
Member Johnson.
Yeah, in terms of insights, you know, one of the things, you know, I know the one calls center are doing everything possible to make things as easy as possible, calling it to anyone. But, you know, some people, do we have any data related to who's calling into the system? Because time is money's costly. So is there something that they're saying, hey, it takes too much time, it's not as easy as it is, if I can just press a button, done with it, notify you, and I'm done, something that takes less time, not as complicated, simple for them, since they don't do it on a regular basis. Right. And if they did on a regular basis, then yeah, it's simple. But if I do it once every 2 years, 3 years, it's difficult and scary.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, our system, you know, our volume is 90+ professional excavators, 90% plus professional excavators. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but homeowners DIY is a small percentage of that. And historically, it's been like that, right? So the system is kind of built in here for them so that it provides the right information to the utility operators. I think that's a great idea. More simple. I just don't know if the utility operators would like less questions answered. So it's this balancing act, you know, but I agree.
And we do track things like average speed of answer through our call center, you know, average ticket time to make it to start to finish. We also have surveys at the end. So those are available to our callers to leave us feedback, ask full, you know, information on that to see what those numbers look like. But we do track that on our end. But I agree, I think, you know, when you use our online system, it is a lot, right? Especially for the first time you move your home. So there are ways I think we can look into trying to fix that process for someone who's not here with day 100.
And as another insight, and one of the things we get most on NOPBs is that, you know, I thought the office called or the person in the field called, so it's that communication gap. And so the responsibility of who's making that call, confirmation of making that call.
But then that always tells me that nobody's checking the positive responses before digging, right? So it's like,
So to capture these, two new insights, Alex, and, please correct me if you'd like this reworded, but, that people are unfamiliar with the process for a ticket submission.
To the ease of
The,
using the system.
okay. So Alex, can we change that one? So that they're unfamiliar with, or that they, are concerned that it's not easy, or that,
If I'm familiar with it or not, I want it to be easy.
okay,
Yeah, I know on our call floor, like we get homeowners sometimes who, once we start asking questions to fill out a ticket, there's some intimidation, I guess is a good word. Like, oh, this seems like a very big deal. So I'm just doing a fence or a mailbox. This seems like I'm kind of getting into something that maybe is not meant for me. So I think that's kind of the idea, right? It kind of scares homeowners off in a way. And then there's been times even I, because I started phones, I had to reassure the homeowner that no, this is meant for you. You just got to ask a few questions and get this data. Some of it might not apply to you, but so that sometimes they have to kind of hold their hand a little more to assure them that they're doing the right thing.
And so that would happen after they have called. So if we're taking a step back where people fail to call, what we would probably be looking at is really that they're not familiar with the process and that they're intimidated by it. Okay. And the other insight was that, but internally, maybe a company doesn't have a communication process for their own projects. Okay. I would like to do a check-in on our online attendees, see if there are some hands raised.
Yes, we have two. It's Michael Forster.
Do you go ahead and unmute hands? Okay, Michael, you should be able to unmute Michael Forster.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a couple steps. All right, it's it asked me permission to unmute and then it remuted me. So I think we're okay. You guys can hear me?
We can hear you now.
All right, great. Thank you. CARGA, California Regional Common Ground Alliance, had formed its panel of subject matter experts as we discussed last meeting. We did have our first meeting a few weeks ago, and it included a lot of utilities, north and south, municipal and private. And in regards to this topic, a few of the seems to be more of the Northern California folks are having issues with smaller contractors on a residential property who have not called. They don't have granular data yet since we just introduced this. So this is a bit anecdotal as well, but we have assigned homework for them to dig deep into the details of these things with the risk management. But right now, are suspecting a lot of the damagers that are either unlicensed or undocumented and are unaware of 811 process and how it's detached from any government regulatory process. So that's one piece. Down south, similar, but in addition, they did have licensed contractors that were writing on other their prime contractors' tickets. So in other words, a subcontractor is not calling in their own ticket. They may have changed the delineation or something, may not have had the marks they needed. They did not call 811 and cause damages. Those are both from local and out-of-state excavators that these utility members on the panel agree they're having problems with. And then lastly, there were some homeowner stuff. It's not as great of a problem for either Northern or Southern California. It's mostly the actual excavators doing the work rather than the homeowners. There's just a handful of homeowners that aren't aware. So as far as insights into it, we have those. Our panel of subject matter experts have been assigned the homework to find a little more details on on the data so we can present it later on. So that's what we've accomplished in our a month so far of being conducting our panel. So.
Okay, thank you. So I want to make sure I captured your insight. So we have the insight here captured that homeowners or DIYers have a low awareness of the process. But let me know if what you were saying was different from that, and we can capture that.
No,
but I did capture. Correct. That is okay. Thank you. But what I did capture to add here is that subcontractors are not calling in their own tickets.
Yes, and then
okay.
Finally, unlicensed or undocumented contractors working on behalf of a homeowner on a residential property are also not calling in their tickets and causing a lot of damages.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they aren't calling in, so they're failing because they aren't licensed or they don't know the process?
It may be that part we don't know yet. We do know that they're unlicensed often. And there is some issues with individuals that are undocumented and are afraid to call 811 to expose themselves.
Okay, I think we can summarize this by, you know, they failed to notify 811 because they may be unlicensed, you know, a contractor might be unlicensed and unfamiliar with the process.
Okay,
So similar to the homeowners, but we're breaking it into the contractors and noting
Right. Yeah.
that key inside of them being unlicensed.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's a general fear with
you.
the contractors that are unlicensed to not expose themselves to regulatory bodies, so they don't call 811. They may be aware, but they're not willing to call.
Okay,
I go with that. I mean, Mr. Worcester. Could be related to, homeowners always looking for the least expensive cost to pay for the services. Where if you had a contractor, licensed contractor, you pay a little more cost versus an unlicensed person, you get what you get.
Absolutely, yes. It definitely changes the overall cost of it, right? Beyond just the price of the excavator. Some of these projects require permits. Obviously, if you hired a licensed contractor, the permit fees will come into action as well. So it's definitely a cost motivated thing for the homeowners to hire these folks.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Another.
There is actually three, Michael Donlin. And Michael, you should be able to unmute. Michael Donlin, you should be able to unmute and speak. Yeah, we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, we will come back to you, Michael, to see if you're able to unmute in a few minutes.
Next is Steve Cleaver. Okay, your mic is allowed. You should be able to unmute now.
All right, confirming you guys can hear me.
Yes, good morning, Steve. We did hear you, but maybe it muted.
Oh, it did. It remuted me on its own. So maybe that was what Michael was also dealing with. I just want to say thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to join you. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to join you in person this morning. I think I've shared some of this in the past, but I think that it is relevant to what we're talking about with what we think and what we know. It may be news, or you may be aware that with PG&E's investigation of all excavation damages to our assets, gas, electric, and fiber, that when there is no 811 ticket, we ask the question, why wasn't there an 811 ticket? And we have a series of drop downs that we're able to ask for consistency. We're aware that there's probably opportunities to improve the clarity of those answers to take away some duplication or reclassification of those. But the answer is different for homeowners because we classify excavation damages in categories of damaging party as well. One being a third-party contractor, meaning that they're not doing work on PG&E's behalf, a third-party government entity, and then third-party homeowners. Homeowners would also include unlicensed contractors, so a contractor or a company or individual that homeowner had contacted and requested that they do work for them, despite not being a licensed contractor. So we'll group unlicensed contractors and homeowners in the same bucket. And the drivers are significantly different for those two. As noted before, very commonly, homeowners are unaware of the 811 process, or if they've seen advertisements, they're unaware that it applies to them and the circumstances that they're working under. For example, planting a tree or doing some sort of relatively small project. They didn't think that 811 applied to them because the work was not permitted, or various sets of circumstances. Whether or not it's required by statute, they just didn't believe that it was a service that they needed to follow. But for licensed contractors, we largely find out that they do know about the process, but there are various drivers for why they didn't call. Believing that they could work under somebody else's ticket, believing that the work that they were doing was exempted by depth, that somebody had called in a ticket for them, that existing marks out there had been placed for their company, or as long as there were marks that they could excavate. But the drivers are distinctly different. And the reason that I share that is because I think our approach, as is understood by this group, needs to be very different for the professional excavator and those that don't necessarily do this as a living, and really think that there's an opportunity to clarify with homeowners, which has historically been the most difficult group to reach, that while they may not have the legal obligation to call, that they have the obligation for their safety, for the safety of their neighborhoods, and the continuity of service to contact, especially if they're hiring an unlicensed contractor as well, that they don't have that level of exemption. So there's certainly some takeaways. I've shared in the past that we do have data around the questions that we've asked, and would certainly be happy to share that through the formal channels if the opportunity presented itself. And that's all I have. Thank you. Unless there are any questions.
Mr. Marshall, I want to ask you a question real quick, sir.
Absolutely. It's good to hear your voice, sir.
My pleasure. On the exempt by depth, you guys track is it done by mechanical tools or if it's hand tools?
Yes, we do track those, and generally done by hand tools, but occasionally we'll have somebody doing irrigation or some trenching that uses mechanical tools where they believe that there was an exemption by depth. But it's generally is done by hand tools when they believe that there's an exemption from depth.
Yeah, so do you possibly think that the reason why they won't call in tickets because they're using hand tools and they won't cause any damage from a hand tool? Could that possibly be rationale?
I believe that that's possible. I think that there's a few potential outcomes that we don't have like really good controls on asking the questions or diving deeper in on these situations. But many times they believe that, well, that it's not going to potentially be damaged by a shovel. And so they thought, well, if I'm digging down, I'll see something that gives me an indication before I actually damage it. Or, all kinds of different things, especially when it's the use of hand tools. And sometimes when we're asking a question, that's the initial response that they have back was, I didn't think I was digging deep enough, or I didn't think I needed to call for this kind of work based off of, I'm just planting a couple of plants in my front yard and I didn't believe that it was an issue. So it's to actually get to the true root of a private homeowner, somebody that may not necessarily be required to contact the 811, to really get to the root cause of that. Sometimes requires a skilled person to ask those questions and then also document it properly. So it's not going to be 100% perfect data, but I do believe that it really gives us a good insight into where we need to focus our marketing and outreach.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So it sounded like some of the things that we have already captured, you agree with, that we have noted here. I did note that two insights that we could capture here, which would be that there are people don't call because there are existing marks and they think that they're covered by those. And the other insight that I captured was that they may believe if they're using hand tools that they're not required. If they're not using equipment, that the process doesn't apply to them.
Yes, and I think I would, for my my personal opinion, I would clarify number 7 to say that it's not just that subcontractors aren't calling in their own tickets, which is true, but there's a belief that they can work under the generals or the person that had hired as long as there are existing marks out there, that they have a belief that existing marks for at least somebody else's ticket potentially exempts them.
We have so many insights that our font has. So we'll give Alex a moment to work on maybe the formatting over on that. But it does sound like Alex, maybe we could take the 7, which is subcontractors are not calling in their own tickets. And we could add a secondary note there that says they believe existing marks, will cover them. Mhm. I don't know if you want to work on, you can adjust the formatting, maybe the spacing. No, I wish I could. Yeah, okay. And then we had another hand raised or,
Yes.
Okay.
This one is a dial pin ending in 1896.
okay,
Allow your mic. So you should be able to unmute yourself by *6.
Can you hear me now?
yeah,
Yeah, this is Mike Donlin. I couldn't get you on the phone, so I tried to, I couldn't get you on the team, so I thought I'd try the phone. Are you hearing me?
we do hear you.
Okay. My name's Mike Donlin. I'm a safety consultant, and I represent, among other agencies, United Contractors, and they've asked me to get more involved with your organization. I'm heavily involved with the Cal OSHA Standards Board and their rulemaking process. So I've been doing this a while. I just wanted to kind of give my 2 cents. I really kind of repetitive of what other people have said, but there is, a lot of people don't even know 811 exists. A lot of contractors, and I actually worked for Cal OSHA for 16 years, and you roll up and someone's not using shoring and they haven't had the area marked either. So it goes hand in hand. They don't do anything. There's also a real lack of the process of pulling a ticket. And a lot of people perceive it as being very difficult. And I think maybe at one time, many years ago, it was, but that's not the case anymore. And I think that's got to be part of your messaging is we're trying to make this as easy as possible. Everyone said not going that deep. Yeah, a lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to be going a foot. That gas line's at least 18 inches down. And then, there's always a group of people that just flaunt the laws and really just don't care. And the only way you get through to them is with enforcement. And one of the other things on this is like the regulations. You guys are like moving fast on doing stuff these days. The regulations, the OSHA regulations and Cal OSHA regulations on excavation haven't changed in years, and so it's low on their totem pole for outreach. Those organizations are not doing a lot of outreach. So they're partnering with Cal OSHA Consultation Service, partnering even with like State Fund, who goes out, who they insure a lot of the smaller contractors that you guys have been talking about. And those kind of things, when you're doing your outreach, could probably get you a long ways with that. Thank you.
We've gotten so many insights, so we're gonna create a new slide. All of the insights and that it's enough font size that people can read. So Alex, if you want to let me know when you have, you want to duplicate this slide and then we can add the new ones. And then I can share both of those. Okay, were there additional
Nope, that was
hands
it.
raised? Okay. Um, Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for this conversation and the insights. Some of what I heard, I'm excited about because we are gonna do a deeper dive on a couple of these insights, and it sounds like everybody has some of those thoughts already. So we're gonna capture those and associate them to these specific insights. And so we've got 10 total, is it?
We have 10, and I believe we just added 2 more, 1 or 2.
Okay.
We have a new slide with the rest.
Okay, thank you. So we'll toggle between a couple of these slides. So I'm gonna do a quick recap of what we've collected. So the insights we've collected is that homeowners, and when we say homeowners, we are specifically defining these as DIYers who are doing the work themselves, have a low awareness of the 811 process. People may fail to notify 811 because of the time it takes. So it may add to their project timeline. People believe that if they are shallow digging, they don't need an 811 ticket. The general public associates markings with professional construction. People are concerned that the process may not be easy. They may be intimidated by it. Companies don't have an internal communication process for their projects. Subcontractors are not calling in their own 811 tickets. They believe that existing markings will cover them. A contractor may be unlicensed. And it looks like we have the existing marks. We had moved that, so I think we can delete that one. Number 9, Alex. And then what will end number 9 is they believe that if they're using hand tools and not excavation equipment, that they are not required to call 811. Did I miss anything? Did we miss anything? I think that that's a good, that's a good number of insights. So what we would like to do is to select 3 of these insights to focus on. We're gonna do individually, we're gonna look at these and we're gonna walk through a 5 whys technique. So this technique is meant to ask why several times to reveal the deeper issues associated with that problem. I will share an example that has nothing to do with the excavation industry, but to just get people in the frame of mind. So in this example, there are what we know is that dental patients are frequently missing their scheduled appointments. And what we think is that patients aren't getting their reminders about their scheduled appointments. So the process we just went through would define the what we think. And so what we will prompt is why. So why aren't patients getting their reminders about their scheduled appointments? And in this example, the feedback was that reminder calls and emails are not being sent. So we asked, why are these not being sent? Because the office relies on a manual system and the people did not send those reminders. So when we ask why the reminders were missed by the people, it's because the staff were too busy with other duties to make those calls or to send those emails. So we asked why were they too busy? We uncovered that the office is short-staffed and those who are in the office are handling too many tasks at once. And when we asked why the office is short-staffed, we uncovered that there is not a backup plan for coverage when an employee is sick or on vacation. So this process identified the root cause. Patients aren't getting their reminders about their scheduled appointments because the office depends too much on manual work without backup staffing for automation of critical tasks for appointment reminders. I would like to say we may not have to ask why 5 times. We might get to a root cause that we agree on after 2 or 3 whys, and that is fine. It's what's important is that we are thinking through you know, the reasons behind these insights. And as I mentioned, in natural conversation, some of those things already did come up, so we'll start to capture those into this process. So I will go back to this first slide with these 5 insights that we captured. So we will start with 3 of these insights. So what we would like to do is ask everybody to, if somebody has one that they feel very strongly about, that they would like to go through this process, we'll give the opportunity for everybody who's attended today to nominate one that they would like to focus on. And if we need to do a tiebreaker, we'll do a tiebreaker. But so we're trying to identify 3 of these that we would like to do that deeper dig on. So I'm gonna open it up to ask the ask the webinar attendees to raise their hand if there's insight that they would like to nominate for this process, and then in person will come to you next. And I can flip through these 2 slides if somebody needs to be reminded of each of these insights. So we have 9 of these and we would like to narrow it to 3. Axel, has anybody raised their hand? Okay.
Michael Worcester.
Okay.
And so we'll start with Michael. There is another that just raised their hand. Michael, I have allowed your mic. You should be able to unmute.
Okay, hopefully it goes only once. You guys have me? Good. All right. Well, obviously, the panel of subject matter experts for Carga agrees on the 2 items, mostly the unlicensed contractors doing work on behalf of homeowners as one. And then the subcontractors who are not calling in their ticket, believing they can run on the other tickets of their primes. Those are the 2 that I'd like to nominate.
Okay. So Michael is nominated 7. Oh, Alex, that was wonderful.
Yeah, 7 and 8.
Thank you so much. And it sounded like we had another.
Yeah,
There you go.
they put their hand down. Oh, there. Okay, Sean Sarin, I'm gonna allow your mic. You should be able to unmute now.
Yeah, just ask me for.
Hi, Sean, we can hear you now.
You'll have to unmute once more.
Sorry. Can you hear us now?
Yes,
Okay, can you go to the first slide, please?
absolutely.
I'd like to nominate 1 and 3. I see the most common in homeowners.
Great. So we have 1, which is DIYers have a low awareness of the process, and 3, which is related to shallow digging. And then we had also had 7 and 8 subcontractors not calling their own tickets, and contractors failing to notify because they may be unlicensed. Okay, do we have additional hands raised at this time?
Currently, no.
Okay. Anybody in the room have something they would like to nominate?
Just clarification, are we nominating new ones? Or are we voting like on top of?
You can do both if you'd like to second. You can officially do that. I will make a tally to note that.
Okay, 7, 6 kind of falls in the same line in my mind.
Okay.
7, and then could you go back to the first slide, and I believe it was 3.
3, so 7. Okay. 7 and 3 have a strong presence so far with 2 votes. Okay. Has anyone raised their hand?
Yes, Michael Donlin,
Okay.
you have access. You should be able to.
Don't hear you yet, Michael.
if you could just hit the microphone button, near the top right to unmute.
We don't hear you yet, Michael. I'm not sure if you were still, I know you had dialed in. I'm not sure if you're still dialed in.
Number is no longer in the list.
Okay. Michael, I'm not sure if you're able to call in again and then raise your hand through the dial in.
Number 3 and number, what's the next page? Number 9 with that.
You think those are similar enough to be? Mhm. So Alex, I think what we could do is for number 9, we can add that, tack that on to number 3, and then we can refine that if needed. Okay. Have any additional hands been raised? Okay. So we've got 7 and 3 that we can move forward with, and then additionally, options 1 and 8 were also identified. So what we'll do is we'll start with 7 and 3, and then we'll work through 1 and 8 and see if we can get through both of those. So I will just go in numerical order of the popular votes, and we'll start with 3. So I'd like to, before we start to go through this process, I would like to refine the insight. We've combined 2 insights that were provided, which is people believe if they're shallow digging, they don't need an 811 ticket, and that they believe if they're using hand tools, they are not required to call 811. So in order to go through the 5 whys process in a very focused way, I think we can refine this to 1 complete sentence that captures everything. So is it based on the, should we refine this to say that, the depth? They think that they are excluded from the process due to the depth that they're digging. Everybody feel comfortable with that? So Alex, we can insert that into the first 5 whys as people believe they are exempt due to their depth and the tools that they are using. Okay. So for this 5 whys technique, what we know is that people fail to notify 811, which causes underground infrastructure damage. And the insight that we collected is that people believe they are exempt from calling 811 due to the depth and the tools that they are using. So we will start this process with the first why, which is why do people believe that they are exempt based on their depth and their tool. So for this, there could be multiple opinions on the why. So we'll work on getting a consensus of moving forward, trying to stay focused on something that we can insert into here that we can then say why to that. And if there's a strong opinion that there are 2 ways that we would like to explore this, we could start with first why, and we could break it out into a second one, and we could take that track as well. So what is important is that we are capturing you know, the reasons behind, the failure to notify 811. So there's,
For the first one, so. No conflict. And there won't be that much of a damage, or it would be harm. To the structure.
okay, so they don't think that they will cause harm.
Not digging that deep.
I'm not taking
Yeah.
no
Mhm.
conflict, so.
Okay.
Yeah, since I'm using the shovel, I'm not gonna cause any damage.
Mhm. So they believe they're exempt because they don't believe their activity will cause damage. Does that capture the first lie? Okay, and Axel, if anybody raises their hand, feel free to let us know.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so while Alex works on adding that one, which will go into the first box. So people believe that they are exempt due to the depth and the tools that they are using. And they think that because they don't believe that their activity will cause harm. So why don't they believe their activity will cause harm or damage?
Michael Forster, please.
Okay,
Michael, can unmute.
And this is not, this is the second one that I was going to speak on, not the first. Is that where we're
yes,
at now?
perfect.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I think, so in my personal opinion, my experience that a lot of these folks with shovels and doing fences with the board, the handheld post digger, don't think that they believe the utilities are strong enough to take a couple hits like a still water line. They don't understand that some of these soft encased cables that are buried directly, like a telephone drop or a gas line or whatever, is actually delicate enough to be damaged. So they're not aware of the physical characteristics of the lines that they're digging near.
Okay, so they don't
Okay.
think that they will cause damage because they think the utility could take a small hit with a shovel, essentially,
Yeah.
right? These are,
They're,
Okay.
they're unaware of how delicate they really are. Yeah.
I
okay,
think there's a depth element to it too. I think people believe the lines are very much deeper that they'll ever be digging to encounter them.
mhm. And so. Okay, and so they're unaware of how delicate they are. So we've also had, I know that people aren't aware of how deep that a line is buried. And so we say that they don't think their activity will cause harm. And the reason is, you know, they may not be aware of how delicate a utility is. If I had more time to make a better flow chart, we would add 2 here. But I do think that you know, the depth is important as it relates to what we think here, right? Is for the depth. And so I'm gonna make a note of that to see if maybe that could be a separate branch that we do. Where we would start with that one as the second one, and then we'll build on that one. But for now, let's get through the process here. I will see if anybody online has a strong opinion, either that this is the right direction that we're going, or that they have another opinion on it, that we can take note of, or if they have thoughts on the next why.
It's like Michael Donlin. You know, allow your mic. It should be able to unmute.
Hi, this is Mike Donlin. I think one of the big
We hear
reasons
you.
here too is, well, it's kind of getting off this one, but it's a lot what Marshall had said earlier, is they also don't realize that ground may have washed away And so it's not nearly as deep as it was when you totally started. But I think I'm kind of out of step with this 5Y actually. So that's it.
Yeah, so Alex, if you can take that note about the depth and hold it off to the side. Or actually we might, so this comment that we just received is also for the depth, so they don't know how deep it is because they're not aware that maybe they learned that things are very deep, but now the world has changed, right? So they're not aware of, and there's more things that are also going underground. So, so Alex, what I would say is, why don't we take the note you have now that they're unaware of how delicate it is. We'll do a separate branch for that one, so save that note. And if you can add it, they don't think their activity will cause harm. The second one should be, they're unaware how deep or shallow underground utilities are buried. And they're unaware of that because they don't realize, basically they don't know how many things are buried and how the earth has changed. Does that seem like a good way to capture that? So that would be the third why, would be that they, so they're unaware of how deep or shallow, that's perfect, and then that they, so they're unaware of, so does it come down to how many things are buried? So that, is that changing the depth of things? And then also there's, erosion is one thing that we've heard. Does this seem to capture this correctly?
Or they're not aware of the location.
The location, okay, yeah, that is a good, that's a good way to clarify that.
We do have a raised hand from Michael Forster.
Okay. We can, yeah,
Michael, your mic is allowed.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a way to consolidate those things that we can continue to flow here. Because it's easy, the whys can go off in many directions because it's such a broad thing. So causing harm because you won't encounter them. Or versus if you do, like I said, that they don't think they can hurt it. So it just seems like if we keep going this way, there's so many ways to counter it with different topics, and we might miss something, as far as the analysis. So how deep or shallow, then how many, those could put into one to say, I don't think I'm going to come in contact with it, that's rather than just two things. But again, it doesn't really help with the idea of they don't think they're going to hurt it, which again, that's an opinion. I don't have data to support that part, but I think at least between these the second and the third, it's really they don't believe they're going to come in contact with it, would be just a way to summarize it, versus how many there are and how deep. Yeah. So essentially.
So the first one.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I think there's a slight delay, so apologies. If I'm capturing this correctly, you're saying to condense this so that the first why, they don't think their activity will cause harm. Why don't they think their activity will cause harm? And that actually is because they don't think that they're going to come in contact with anything that is any of the underground utilities. So that would be the second why. That would cover both of these that we currently have as number 2 and 3.
And of course, if you add my first suggestion, it still becomes another tangent. So I can't really apply that. You know what I mean? Which is fine, because again, that's just pure opinion. I don't have any data to support that. The panel didn't discuss that. We will after this call. I will definitely make sure we come. Well, what the panel is they're doing their homework to collect more granular data. But for now, as far as moving this workshop along, I'm not sure how we could add any belief that they don't, that, you know, it could take a shovel strike. I would just maybe just remove that, you know. But as far as what you wrote right there, those four, I think we're still on three. If you take those, what you put on the fourth one, you could in the second spot, you could remove the other two because they were just the same thing, right? So you could start from
Yeah,
one, will cause harm, two, not going to come in contact. And there may be, you may be working, there's definitely maybe a delay here as well that I'm seeing online versus what you're doing there in
Sure.
person. There we go. So then we'd go to, yeah, that makes a little more sense to me that we could keep drilling down into not coming in contact with utilities, which we get into an idea of not understanding how they're built, which would cover what I said, right? They don't understand how they built, how their houses are fed, you know, where's a water line, what's a joint trench? They don't understand any of this stuff.
That's the point I was gonna jump on, and I'm glad you said that. I
Yeah.
think just the population doesn't have any understanding of utility infrastructure and how, you know, their homes are supplied with vital services. So it's underground, it's not seen, not really
Right.
spoken about. So
Right.
there's virtually zero understanding of these types of things.
In my 14 years as a tech out there, with the phone company, I did a lot of discussion with homeowners of why I'm there, what I'm doing, why is there a hole in your yard, or why, you know, they have very little understanding whether renters or homeowners. There's not much knowledge about, you know, easements, right of ways, or anything. So, I think that's important to put there for sure. Okay, thank you.
yeah, thank you.
So how do you answer the next one?
Mhm.
It's like, what do I need to know?
Yeah.
How
Right.
would I?
Yeah, they're only
And-
gonna know once they have a big giant hole in their yard. Now they're gonna know.
Yeah, and that's, I think that is an important question, because we may get to some of these chains that we go down where we do get to that point where we say, well, why, you know, why would they need to know? And so remembering, you know, the question that we are trying to answer is, right, like, because I don't understand how these utilities are built, they're failing to pull 811. But what I really captured, what I really liked and captured that Michael said is, that's because they don't see it, right? So they don't understand how underground utilities are built. Well, why don't they understand that? Well, because they don't see it. It's not part of, you know, their life really, unless it is, right? And so that becomes something that might be actionable. Well, if it's because they don't understand because they can't see it, then maybe there's you know, awareness that can be done about, and materials that can be created where we show people what it looks like.
Right.
So that is,
Substructure is not visible.
yeah, I like what he
I
said,
guess-
substructure not visible.
That's why I figured you know, our goal of asking the 5 whys to get to a point where we can actually do something, like you said, actionable. So I'm just trying to keep that in mind too. And that's why, you know, I stress to condense the other ones so we have more space to find something actionable and aim towards it. So thank you again.
I'm going to say that I think that we don't need a 5th why, but I will open it to the room and to the online attendees.
And I would agree. I think the natural answer is this, it's underground. So I think we're good there.
Okay. So if we wanted to consolidate this into identifying what the root cause would be, is, you know, people think that they are exempt, because the substructure, so they don't,
Why you should be called it.
right,
And if people come out to identify what's there, that way you do it. Not necessarily visible, but you see some markings that indicate
mhm,
that something's there.
mhm. Yes,
Not advocating for another box, but just throwing this out there.
you can.
Could it be they don't understand how they have internet in their house or how they have water? There's a disconnect ultimately. Because when they're when the water goes out, you instantly know, or the Wi-Fi goes out, internet, then it's like, oh no, right? It's the worst. So there's not a connection that they don't know that everything is underground and that's how it's being delivered to the house and then it goes from there.
Yeah. I think, yeah. I think that plays into it's kind of, adding additional context to the structure, substructures not being visible, because if it isn't visible, they don't understand how it affects their lives, really.
Yeah, I used to get a story all the time, be out, and they got a microwave and everyone's using, wireless phones. Said, well, I don't care, take the wire out, take the wire out. That connection is not gonna be able to help you. So I can't take the wire, you'll always have wires, regardless, even though you don't see them or use them. It is wires, just to feed some sources, just limited.
Yeah.
You have a
Yeah,
raised hand online, Michael Forster again. Your mic is allowed.
Again, to get to actionable, maybe the third and fourth should be reversed. Is they don't think they're going to come in contact because they don't see it. They don't see it is because they don't understand it. And now we're set up to find an actionable something to do. So maybe the third and fourth should be reversed. They don't really understand it because they don't see it. You know what I mean? Well, okay, no, I just said it the other way and it works too. Well, I mean, they don't, even if they don't see, first they don't see it. And that only reason why that matters is because they don't understand how these things are built and how their houses are given water, power, communications, gas, right? So then we get to a spot where we find ourselves able to educate the public on ultimately that's where this is going, right? Is how can we educate the public, homeowners, on how utilities are fed to their property and therefore why 811 is an important thing, you know? That's how I'm just trying to get to that point. Yeah, I'm not really saying anything new as far as a why, just trying to give us an actionable spot. So they could be reversible, but to come up, they don't see it. Why don't they see it? Is almost because they don't understand it. They're not looking for it, you know? Even if they didn't see it, if they understood how it was built, then it wouldn't be a problem. They didn't see it. So we're kind of in a spot where we could put interchangeable, but to get to the ultimate goal of obviously where this is going, right, is educating homeowners about public utility operation for themselves and ultimately why 811 is important.
I think it flows. If you go to start at number 2, then it flows out. You could flow that way. Just understanding 2 can go to number 4, and 4 could go.
Yeah.
okay.
And
What I do
ultimately,
think
we
is-
got to educate. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. What I think is interesting is that when we defined this insight, we did not specify that this was homeowners. But what this group of participants has done is has associated it with homeowners. So when we originally discussed this, right, there are other accidents that happen when non-homeowners are, think that they are exempt due to their death. And so I think that, potentially we should clarify for this. Instead of saying people, we should say homeowners, and then we may want to decide if we should do a broader analysis as well.
Yeah.
Saying take
Yeah.
it.
For it
No,
to
I
work,
think
it
we
has
did
to be.
define. Mhm. Mhm. Sure, sure.
Saying non-professionals.
Unless someone has a different opinion, would you think that this would, that this would connect, when we're talking about their activity won't cause harm, they don't think they can come into contact, they don't understand how they're built, and that, that they don't see them. why don't we take a quick break and we can think about that? I think that this, I know that these are complicated, things to dive into, and I really do appreciate that everybody is taking the time to discuss these in depth. So why don't we take a moment, a few minutes break, we'll take, 10 minutes. And then we'll come back and we can wrap this one up and move on to the next one. So we'll come back. Oh, I did not find a even time to do this. I could have waited 2 minutes. We'll come back right before, at 11:08. 11:10, I'm rounding it. Everybody gets an extra 2 minutes. Yeah, surprise. Everybody, we're gonna resume the workshop now. So just to recap where we were prior to the break, we had walked through our first 5 whys technique. During the break, I did update this so that we could work through the next activity. We're gonna try to leave about 30 minutes for the presentations of data and education and outreach materials. And so we've wrapped this up as the root cause that we identified to say that people don't understand or can't see substructures, so they don't make the connection on how their work may impact those substructures. And then, Alex, if you're able to prepare our next 5 whys technique, and that should be, we were looking at 3 and 7, so.
The next one was.
Perfect. Okay. Great. So the next insight that we're gonna analyze is we know that people fail to notify 811, which causes underground infrastructure damage. And what we think is that some are calling in their own 811 ticket. And actually, when we say they think existing marks will cover them, that might be the first why that is already identified. So I will, leave that open to the public comments. But if we want to narrow this to say we think subcontractors aren't calling their own calling in their own 811 tickets, if anybody agrees that we could move, they think existing marks will cover them potentially to the first why, or if anybody would like to clarify on that. I will open it to comments from the committee, from online, in the room. Colin looks like he is.
Yeah. You got that look.
Remember Johnson looking at me. I don't know where this fits in, but going back to the point, the person that's digging or that company is not confirming the marks and checking the positive response before digging. Because if they did that, then they would know that 4 out of 5 different companies responded and they're missing one. But as soon as they see any marks, they're thinking they're just good to go, which is really scary, in my opinion. But I that's just like a huge concern for me. And I don't know where that fits in, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
And so, when we're looking at why they are failing to call in the first place, and so if I understand correctly, what you're saying is if they had called, they would then see, the responses. And so take that step back, I think saying that they think, that there are existing marks that might cover them, that is pretty specific. So there might be some other reasons, but would that cover that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my concern is Mr. Cleaver and Mr. Forster. I think their data was looking at more of a subcontractor, work. For general, and not calling it a ticket because they're thinking they either looking on the general's ticket and they already got existing marks. So since there's already existing marks, they don't need to call in again on the same area, the same. I don't know what that covered, or that's something totally different.
Michael Worcester has their hand up. Michael, your Michael.
Thank you. I'm definitely not trying to complicate it. I think for the panel, really the data is the motivations for the subcontractors, they are professionals. For them not to call an 811 ticket is almost always driven by money, right? For like the number 1 rule of journalism, follow the money. And in their case, it's, well, we've already got marks. If I do it, there's another 2 days I'm waiting around. The data showing a lot of these folks are from out of state. They have hotels. They got crews of 10 or 12 up in hotels. They may have rental cars. They may have rental equipment. downtime is very expensive. So as far as money motive or motivation for not calling in what they believe is an additional or redundant 811 ticket is to save money and time. Versus the number one being they think the existing marks are covering them. I would almost think that the original one is, or at some point we want to show the data reflecting the data that it's a money saving thing. It's time and money that they're trying to save. And maybe it does work because they believe that they're covered. The marks are fine. I can save money by not doing it. Why not? The marks are fine. They're already there. That kind of stuff. So however that fits into this 5 whys. And again, I'm not trying to complicate it because, but I do want it to reflect what the data is showing for a pretty good collection of utility operators in our panel of subject matter experts, as we discussed. So, yeah, thank you.
What we're saying now is that they're saving time and money. Proceeding without a ticket.
Yeah, so they're not calling in their own tickets. Why? Will they see existing marks? And think those will cover them. Well, why do they think that? And actually, it's because they have a deeper motivation, which is time and money. So they are believing that these marks will cover them because they're motivated to save time and money.
Because you realize what the sub is there to do. It's to do a certain part of the task. They're not there to do the entire job. So maybe just to use the saw blade or it may be. So there's marks existing. They're good to go. So that's risk.
Mm-hmm.
We do have another hand raised. I believe this is Michael Donley. Michael Donley, your mic is allowed.
Yeah, it's Mike Donlin again. I think part of this is really they also, and I don't know if it goes before this one or after one, they don't think the existing marks will cover, or they think the existing marks will cover them. They don't understand why they need to get it remarked for their process. And I've read all the 811 NORTHDAT, information and Targa, and they all say everyone has to get it, but no one explains why. And so I think they don't understand, why they need to get it marked also. And I think that may play into this too. I don't know if that goes before saving time and money, but I think there's really no understanding of why each subcontractor needs to do their markings, their own ticket. Thank you.
Yeah, and so two of these additional ideas that have been presented here that I noted were that as subcontractors, they're not doing the entire job so they don't feel like they have the responsibility for that 811 process and that understanding of why their marks are needed. So I think if we look at this, so we can say the first why they think the existing marks will cover them. I think that the second why that would fit here would be they think that those marks will cover them because they're not doing the entire job. They're doing a sub part of that job. And so
it's like the mentality of the employee and the employer. So what role are they playing? So they're being employed by the contractor. So it's up to him to cover it.
Mm-hmm. And so then that could lead into they don't understand why that is needed. So trying to think of the best way to arrange these.
Roles and responsibilities.
Wonderful. So do you think for the second one that would be that, or for the third one? Mhm. Yeah, so their roles and responsibilities. And then the next question would be, why don't subcontractors understand those roles and responsibilities?
Because they weren't clear.
Okay,
The general is supposed to outline everything that they're required to do, so obey the law, comply with the law. They don't enforce it and do it then.
okay,
Can we squeeze in, they don't know, that they're not informed of the law on the fourth one, and maybe that one's the fifth one?
so they don't understand their roles and responsibilities. And the reason why they don't understand their roles and responsibilities is because they aren't familiar with the law. And they aren't familiar with the law because the general contractor is not enforcing it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Those lines.
yes, that would be, yes, you're doing it. Perfect. Okay, so I'd like everybody to, I'll recap this quickly and then we can, have a few minutes to take any comments if somebody feels strongly that there is something missing or that this doesn't accurately represent. And so subcontractors aren't calling in their own 811 tickets. They think the existing marks will cover them. And they think that because they're only doing part of the job. And they think that part of the job is exempt because they don't understand the rules and responsibilities. Which is because they aren't familiar with the law, which is because, as a subcontractor, the general, contractor would be enforcing that and is not doing so. And we'll open it to, any public comments, so Axel, let us know if anybody has raised their hands. Okay. Any additional comments from the committee or in-person attendees? Okay.
Let's speak.
I've been unmuted. Did you saw my hand was up, Michael Worcester?
We can hear
We
you.
can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm sorry. No, I'm not going to change anything. I think this actually reflects something that our panel has discussed. We do have professional excavators on there as well. And we did discuss subs of subs, and this is right in line with it. So I fully agree.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Axel, if anybody else raises their hand, just let us know. And so if we want to identify the root cause, of why subcontractors aren't calling in their own 811 tickets, it's, I think the last why wraps that up pretty, clearly to say the root cause is that the general contractor is responsible for, you phrased it differently than I will, but the general contractor is providing like a either a safety briefing or and may not be enforcing that. I was very ambitious and thought we might get through 3 or 5 of these, but we've had some really great conversations. I think we will wrap up the 5 whys techniques for this workshop so that we are able to move on to items 5 and 6 for those who have let us know that they would like to present, and for anybody else who has decided in the last couple of hours that they would maybe like to present. So we have some additional information that we have collected that we could come back and work through at a different time. But for now, we've worked through the 2 of these insights to come up with identified root causes, which we will recap at the end of the workshop. I keep wanting to say webinar, but it's a workshop. So, so we will move on to item 5 here. So this is going to be the public presentation of industry data. I know at the beginning of the call, we did have a couple of people who identified that they wanted to present. So at this time, if you were online, please go ahead and raise your hand to indicate that you would like to participate in this item. And I think we had in person, I believe, Colin, that you were going to participate as well?
Yes,
Yes,
actually Matt Dog from.
Matt participates. Matt, are you ready or would you like us to start with the online?
No, I can go. I mean,
Okay.
full disclosure, this is on my part. Wasn't fully prepared to do a presentation, but I can definitely share some answers to the questions that are within the agenda.
Yeah, a formal presentation is not necessary.
Perfect. Okay, so data. So yeah, we do collect data, damage data. Again, as I mentioned earlier, that's dependent on the excavator, DIYer, to contact us at 811 and then notify us about that damage. We don't currently collect any data from our utility operators about no-call damages in a formal way. It's something we've been interested in to try and add more context to the data that we currently have, but not something that we currently facilitate. So everything's coming in almost on a, I know there's obviously 4216 requires notifications to the 811 center in cases of damages, but realistically, it's coming in on a voluntary basis from the excavator. So typically, if someone makes a call that gets a ticket, those are the more common cases where we get damage data. They then call us to notify us about the damage so that we can then notify the utility. For the no calls, they're often just contacting the utility directly or potentially 911. They're unaware, I'm sure, of the call. With the damage data, so the ones that we have been notified about currently year to date in 2025, there's 808 damage notifications. The top counties that we are seeing damages in is, I think, Santa Clara is another one. So Santa Clara, followed by Sacramento and Fresno. So those are our top 3 damage counties currently. And then in terms of the actual work types that we're seeing, it's utility work is leading the type of work those excavations were associated with that led to utility damage. And then when we break down the utility distribution work, there's a few subcategories in there, like what type of utilities, water and communication are the top 2 specific utility works that we're seeing. In terms of trends, so trends about who's not calling 811, I think we kind of discussed that earlier. When you see there's no hard data for us to really support this, so we lean on a lot of we talk with the dirt team fairly regularly to see what they see in the field as they investigate those no-call damages. But we're hearing from other utilities a very similar narrative, right? It's a lot of homeowners who aren't aware of the process, small scale excavation outfits, fencing, landscaping contractors who maybe either aren't aware or they are aware but don't see the value or the service for their project. So that stuff is kind of ringing true, I think, across the board from what I've heard in our meeting today. Region, typically every year we see, we break down our damages per 1,000 tickets within our service territory, and we look at them on a county basis. And this helps us provide kind of a better contextual understanding of how serious certain counties are, depending on population size. With that, though, we do see higher ratios within more populated, busier counties, right? The Bay Area is very busy, work saturated, a lot of contractors coming in doing various types of work. So we typically see higher damage ratios in those counties. As we start moving out into rural areas, those numbers do decrease, right? As excavation work decreases and utility density is typically much less in those further out areas. So as utility density increases, excavation work increases, we typically see damage ratios go up. Measuring success, great question. So damage data is a big one because those are the hard data points that we get. So we try to, we lean on that a lot to measure our success, but even that is difficult. There's a lot of factors that go into damages, even beyond calling 811, things like tolerance zone, right? If it failed to maintain that clearance, that could be associated to a damage. Something we do is when we get our damage per county data, our education team makes a proactive effort to try and really go out there in person to host public presentations to try and get more awareness on the 811 process to those groups and really kind of hit those counties harder. We have for a long time been understaffed with our education coordinators, so we just this year got our third staff member, which has really helped us in terms of our reach. So we're evaluating their performance. We have some surveys that we provide out at the end of our classes as well. And we're hoping to kind of align that with the damage data down the road to see if there's any positive trends for us in this area. What's missing in the data for us? No call damages. That's a big thing that I want to try and get access to. I think it helps us paint a bigger picture on areas that are suffering and that focus on. It would give me a lot better insight as well on how we can market, diversify our outreach efforts. And then obviously with that, I would love demographical data in that report. Homeowner, excavator, what size company, how many employees, what type of work they typically are commonly giving out there, things like that.
Okay. Can I ask one clarifying question? So you said that you're using the damage data to identify counties to target for your education and outreach. And so this is kind of getting into item 6, but we're talking a little bit about the content, but it's sounds like it's both proactive and reactive, right? So you're looking at this damage data and then you're reacting to that, but then you're proactively going out to high damage counties to try to prevent further incidents.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, I'd probably classify that approach as a reactive approach. We're looking at that data and then going in there after the fact, assuming that, we don't provide education, that work may continue to increase. We are trying to be proactive, but our proactive efforts have really shifted to joining with associations and possibly trying to facilitate localized meetings, partner meetings to bring stakeholders in and talk about localized issues that may be causing pain points with the 811 process or leading to damages. So it's a company goal of ours actually to host one of these meetings to kind of start this. And we just haven't put it into effect yet. We're still planning out and trying to kind of figure out where we're gonna do our first one, so to speak. But we want to be more proactive and we're trying to find ways to kind of address these problems before the excavator causes that damage.
I'll try not to make you repeat that in the next item. Okay. I'd like to offer an opportunity if anybody had any questions. If there are any hands raised, well, I know somebody else is going to present, so we probably have a hand raised, but if that is something, if somebody had any questions, they can go ahead and raise their hands and we will get to them. But thank you for providing that information. And we can move on to the next presentation of data.
Yes, we have Michael Worcester and Steve Beaver.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Allow Michael Worcester, your mic is allowed.
Right. Thank you. With our panel, we didn't discuss line by line these items, but these items weren't discussed. And it was generally speaking, the panel, most members use it through damage data, incident reports, right? Responding to the damages to their facilities, and the excavators obviously analyzing their own damages that they have been a party to. The trends we kind of talked about it the last time about who's not calling. Region group role and project types. The only thing I would add to that, the regions are definitely our metropolitan regions tend to be the most busy with damages. That might just be a reflection of population. But as you know, Bay Area, Sacramento, LA, Metro, San Diego. The group we've kind of already discussed the role and role, you know, the groups as we discussed the residential work being done by unlicensed excavators. That's nothing's changed there. That's one on the professional excavator side, subs, and I think the new part would be the project type, which is between the two big projects we see throughout the state, which is a fiber optics build, right, for in the pursuit of high-speed internet for everybody in the state of California. Very, very active and busy project that's been going on for well over 10 years, and it's not slowing down one bit. That along with the new undergrounding efforts throughout the whole state. And it's not just we're finding our members are finding that it's not just mountain areas, but it's definitely urban. There's a lot of drive to push these down. The coming of the fiber optics network is an opportunity for all these things to come together. So the project we're finding, our members are finding these together, both the undergrounding of all the utilities along with the fiber build coming as far as project type, having a leading role in damages. Back to the first one, collecting as well. Well, actually, no, I'll leave that for later. How do they measure success? The panel that's one of the things we found in general for the panel. There's not a lot of measure of the success. They don't, some of them do take a before and after look, but it's not something that's formalized. And I think it's good that this program is coordinated, right? And we could take that back to the panel and work on that as a goal for the entire year. So I guess to answer it, they don't really measure it at a really robust way. They do collect data and track public understanding behavior. They have a lot of public events, different Long Beach, for example, during the Grand Prix, they do a lot of public outreach at the Grand Prix. They have tables and booths, they do surveys, and they do talk about 811 and damage, awareness type things. Some of our excavators, well, actually, that's another subject. I don't want to get too lost in here. One of our Bay Area cities that provide utilities, they track their damages and then the outreach to those excavators continually, and they also kind of hold them at bay for new permits unless they go through some sort of training. So that's one way they track. And then what's missing in the data? I think it's the details of the why. They're not really tracking why they're having damages. They know who, they know when and where, but not necessarily why. They don't. That's one of the things we want to coordinate with you guys, is developing a great program on making sure the data they collect and analyze is relevant, because there are definitely gaps. So again, that's through the work on the panel this month. That's what we have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Welcome.
I believe had Steve Kleber had his hand raised as well.
Steve Kleber, I just allowed your mic. You should be able to unmute.
Yep, I'm good now. Thank you again. Appreciate the comments from Matt and from Michael. Just going down the questions that you have on the board, what data are you collecting and analyzing? So I believe most everybody knows this, and just from previous conversations, but just to reiterate for those that don't, PG&E investigates 100% of our line strikes to our facilities, to both gas, electric, and then also to the occasional fiber optic that we have for primarily for SCADA. And we do a very similar causal analysis workflow to what has been released by the Common Ground Alliance to get to the root cause data, or at least the basic causal evaluation that assists in providing consistent data to PHMSA and also to CGA through dirt reporting. We, on a monthly basis, we evaluate all of our gas damage reports that come across the industry, or pardon me, across our work group, and we evaluate every single leak or potential reported damage to verify that we've captured all of those and that we're not missing any potential data out there, because any missed data is a missed opportunity for lessons learned. So we're taking all of that information and then reporting that out, and then using it also for our outreach and education purposes. We have, on average, each year, about 50% of our damages come from no 811 call. Of those no 811 calls, it's split about evenly between homeowners and their unlicensed contractors and professional licensed excavators. It's about 50-50 split on our no one calls. So, translating that out, that's about 25% of our damages come from a homeowner or their unlicensed contractor hiring somebody to do the work. And it's roughly 87 to 90% of those homeowners that damage something have not called 811. That is consistent pretty much across our territory. There is no one standout for no one call damages over another, and it's pretty consistent to the trends that we see for damage volumes by division or region for us. When I look at region on for the last 3 years, Sacramento has the highest volume of damages, followed by what we call our Yosemite division, which essentially is Madera, Merced, Mariposa, and Stanislaus County. And then the North Bay region extending into Marin County, Napa County, areas where they're doing a lot of rebuilds on existing structures. So those are some of the areas that we're seeing the highest volumes, and it's consistent in those areas that it's around 50%, sometimes slightly lower, sometimes slightly higher, of no one call damages. Our measure of success, like Matt was talking about, is we do use a normalized ratio. So that's the number of damages versus number of USA tickets divided by 1,000. And we do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's benchmarkable across other gas utilities. We do that also for electric, but it's benchmarkable against other gas utilities. But we measure in other ways as well. We're not just looking at the ratio, because based off of ticket volumes or ticket types, there could be a very high number of renewal tickets where excavation is not actually happening for a period of time that don't really represent risk. So that ratio might get skewed by renewals of tickets or really low risk other work that's coming in. And so we also look at damages on the gas side per miles of main, or per miles of service, or per miles of gas transmission. Now, when we do that, it's done separately from the ratio, because the ratio is intended to represent risk, the number of times people are intending to excavate or excavating. And the mileage takes out that risk of the volume of excavation activity, and it just applies the miles of main. And we look at those separately to know if there is a skew going up or down in either one of those, or if we're seeing consistent results across both of those, because we don't want to get lulled into a false sense of confidence that, hey, we're doing really well because ticket volumes have gone up, but our damage volumes are also creeping up on us. We have, over the last, since 2019, every year has been a reduction in gas damages. Last year was a slight anomaly to that. We saw an increase, I think, of 7 gas damages in 2024 over 2023. But every year prior to that, since 2019, has been a best ever performance for us as far as volume of gas line strikes. And we're continuing to see that into 2025. This year, we had our best Q1 ever with total gas line strikes, and very similar performance on electric line strikes to what we saw last year. And then in April, we also preliminarily, I was doing some looking this morning, also had one of our best Aprils ever. We had less than 100 gas line strikes, 92 tentatively in April, whereas in previous years we had never seen a number less than 100. So we're looking at all of the different things that we're doing and trying to identify certain drivers that are improving that behavior. Really believe that the outreach and education that we're doing immediately after a damage and partnering with that excavator or their employees to understand what happened, why it happened, and how to prevent it. Really believe that that's driving down some of our damages, primarily because we're seeing the rate of recidivism. That's my big word for the day. Drop. We're seeing far fewer repeat contractors on the list of damages. And we're also had the opportunity to present at CGA on the topic, but we're also really looking at data and trending that data and using that data to make informed decisions on where we need to focus our outreach and activities, rather than peanut butter spreading an approach, because what may work in Sacramento in a sprawling area where there's a lot of new construction happening is going to be a very different approach than we would need to take in, say, Marin County, where they're working on very tight foundations with the existing assets in those areas, and also very different than what happens in San Francisco, where the residential construction is very similar to Marin, but the commercial construction is very, very different with some of the encumbrances that contractors are experiencing there. So really taking kind of a focused approach based off of data of how we should be targeting activities in certain areas, and believe that's where the benefits are coming from. Of course, we can't take complete credit for it because we've got fantastic partners like the folks at DigAlert and USA North in really partnering to get the word out and targeting certain areas that they're finding damages beyond just in gas and electric, to really help and educate there as well. And I think really the thing that the Underground Safety Board has not yet had the opportunity to really leverage is that consistent, reliable data to understand what's happening and to make decisions based off of it. And I looking forward to a time where that data is more accessible and reliable to help the board take the actions that are really going to continue to move the needle when it comes to actual excavation damages. I know there's a lot of focus on other things that present opportunities for improvement, such as the GIS and mapping records and other things of that nature. But when we're seeing 50% of our damages come from no one call, and damages that are coming from records error or other things representing roughly a 5 or a 10% of damages, would really like to see focus on the opportunities that are going to have the greatest impact first. Happy to take any questions, but just wanted to kind of share some of what we've seen and what we're doing to drive performance internally.
This Marshall, I have a question, I guess, for everybody, because I was just thinking back in the day when I was working, was my number one damager, and was this person called unknown. And matter of fact, it was my number one, and never was ever able to find them. So evidently they didn't have a ticket, and they cut it and moved on with their life. And I think that's the biggest pot damagers that we have, and failure to notify 811. But I don't think we are looking at that at all. We're looking at the ones that we've identified, but not the ones that we have not identified. So just a heads up that probably want to start collecting and looking at those trends as well.
Member Johnson, I appreciate you saying that, because that's a perspective that we don't necessarily have as much of because of the types of commodities that we have. We will occasionally have a burnout that happens from a previous contact that corrodes over time, and then it results in a burnout. But most of the time that we're having damages that we're discovering, it is a release of gas or it is an outage. So we're finding out about the bulk of our damages relatively contemporaneous to the second big word for myself today, to the event itself. But understand that there are other commodities that you may not have that, and you may have um, damage such as cathodic protection or a nick in a line that compromises integrity over time. And in the communications industry, that may be a something that people don't necessarily recognize the quality or the line drop or whatever it is immediately, and it progresses over time. So we don't have that issue, but I would imagine that it's happening a lot of other places.
Thank you.
Thank
Do
you.
you have a comment from Michael Forster?
All right. We have about 10 minutes left in the session, and one more item before we wrap up. So, Michael, if you wanted to provide your comment with that in mind.
Thank you. Speaking on you, Marshall, what you said, Marshall, obviously, I'm very aware of what you have experienced myself, and I will take that to the panel. I think some of the water utilities in my experience have gone through the same thing, because some of those things aren't reported immediately. Kind of a hit and run, especially with horizontal boring. Outside of obviously electric and gas, you can sever water, you can sever sewage, communication, cable TV, all those kind of things, and take off without anybody noticing. And my experience has shown a lot of those folks, again, are out of state. So I will take that to the panel and present it as something to work on. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. We will move on to item 6, which is a public presentation of, oops, I was already there. I think we're going to move that slide. Thank you. So it's a public presentation of, there it is. Education and outreach materials. Sorry, I'm watching the time here. I quickly wanted to just, share, or I'm sure some of you are aware, but there may be some people who are not aware, that the Common Ground Alliance's damage prevention curriculum. So this is a free online excavated curriculum, and it is accessible to everyone. You don't have to have a membership. And there are modules that vary from beginner topics to those looking to enhance their expertise, and they are offered in English and Spanish. So there is also a blueprint that is available that shows you the different phases and when they expect to have those phases completed and what the topics would be. And so I bring this up because in our previous workshops, we did hear from stakeholders two items, including accessibility of training as well as multilingual content, and how those were important for safety training. So this module gives both of those because it is free and there are multiple languages. I will say that we heard some comments around multi-generational stakeholders who may not have access to technology. So I did want to recognize that this could still present challenges if we're looking at it from that vein. We had some people who wanted to present their education and outreach materials. So some of the key questions here, we're looking at the timeline, kind of just the types of content that you're using, your target audiences, and if there's anything that you feel is incomplete about your current curriculum that needs additional support. While I don't want to rush people, we do have 5 minutes left today because we've had a really, really great conversation. And while I would love to stick around through lunch, we will try to wrap this up here, and then we'll have some closing remarks. That said, if you wanted to present and you're online, please go ahead and raise your hand. And then we can start with online if we have any hands raised, and then we can come to the room.
I believe this is Michael Donlan.
Great. All right, Michael, you should be able to unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, so my telephone works at least. Yeah, I'm really impressed with the data that we just talked about a minute ago that the people are collecting. And I'm going to go back to the Yukon Safety Committee and see if there's any data on our part as contractors that we can collect. As far as this item on the page now, we do have products that our target audience is just for our members. This isn't stuff that's out to the general public. But the main thing we have is, Cal OSHA requires every contractor to have a code of safe practice. So Yukon has had a template for that for their contractors for years. We revamped that template last year, and one section, of course, is on excavation. And we actually put in 5 or 6 pages on locating, marking, digging safely around existing utilities, protecting existing utilities. When you look at these code of safe practices, most places, they're solely focused on cave-in protection. And we gave equal time in our new document to, utility protection along with cave-in protection. So I think that's kind of unusual, and I think, that'd be something that I think, the board could look at potentially developing something like that for smaller contractors, especially so they have that information that they can put in their code of safe practice, which is really the safety rules they want their employees to follow. So, that's something that's definitely proactive. It's, we also offer reactive help when one of our members does hit a utility, but this is definitely something that we do that is proactive. Thank you.
Thank you. Axel, how's our webinar hand raises looking?
We have one more
Okay.
from Michael Forster.
Great. Michael?
Okay, Mike.
Thank you. I know we're out of time, so I'm not going to try to address the 4 bullet points here. I just want to let you know that we'll take these. We have covered some of this, but not all of it. We will take this agenda and include in your following agenda and work on it through the month. I think you're one step ahead of our panel. We'd like to be in line with you guys, a little more prepared to get through these topics really quickly. So I appreciate the time, and like I said, I'll take the parts of this agenda, this agenda, and combine it with your new one that you will send out soon, and make sure we get covered all of those. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then in person, do you guys want to run through anything or? No pressure.
Yes, let me quickly run through it. All right, so we do a handful of different strategies. We have safe events similar to what Matt mentioned earlier in our high ticket volume counties, and we add in high damage counties to that. So safe event is safety awareness for excavators. Those are geared towards professional excavators. We rent out a hall and then invite anybody in that county, in the contiguous counties, and do a law presentation for professionals. In addition to that, we do direct presence. So that's kind of more of a proactive approach. In the reactive approach, we do direct presentations. So those are basically requests that come to us. We go out to their shop or yard and then do the same presentation just for a single company. We have an online, well, right now it's offline, but we're revamping our online program. That really helps us out because the state's so big and our service area is so large that if somebody only has 3 people and, we're not going to be able to travel up to wherever in a timely manner, usually they opt in for either a webinar or the online education course that they could do at their own pace. They could save it, do some of it, save their progress, and then come back to it wherever they're at. In addition to that, we send out email blasts to current users of the system, letting them know, any upgrades to our system or law changes, anything like that. So they're in the loop and they have ample time to, make any internal policy changes if they have it. We have we have a ton of YouTube training videos on our YouTube page. I won't go into too many details, but yeah, there's a ton of content on there. How to pre-mark, that's in both English and Spanish, and then how to create tickets, all that good stuff. Our website, we consider pretty educational. It has all of the information about A11, the process. We have it broken down into 3 categories geared towards professional excavators, utility operators, and then DIY homeowners. We tend to say DIY just because if they're renting or whatnot, it kind of just still captures them. We have a ton of printed collateral. We have the excavation manual that has the law on it, and then also California, or excuse me, the CGA best practices. That has that. We're trying to move away from that, not move away from it, still have it, but then have a field guide that's a little bit easier to digest. Currently, we're distributing those law handbooks that have the California Government Code 4216, but if you're in the field, it's pretty tough to get through, especially if you're, you know, the one with the shovel in your hand. It's kind of overkill and it's a lot of legalese. You got to reread it. We have to reread it when we get questions just to make sure, you know. So we're trying to make it a little bit easier for them and actionable so they can digest in this new approach with our field guide that we're pretty much done. We just have to get it printed out now. Ton of stickers, A1 hard hat stickers, vehicle stickers, color code card stickers, homeowner pamphlets, and then from the proactive outreach marketing aspect side of things, we do a handful of sports partnerships in various high ticket county areas. Mostly they're just high population to try to get the word out from homeowners and just the general population, which, you know, contractors fit in that bucket as well. Social media, we have a ton of social media platforms. We're on all the major ones, LinkedIn, as I mentioned earlier, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and then also TikTok. We're with a bunch of associations, you know, whether that's Carga or UConn and other organizations or associations just that fall within our industry space. Ag specific outreach, we do things with the California Farm Bureau, their publication that comes out every month. We have advertisements in that, and then we also participate in the World Ag Expo down in Tulare that has 3-day event, over 100,000 attendees there. So that's kind of the really quick version of the presentation.
Thank you. Realize that was a heavy ask for you, but I do appreciate you sharing that information and reserve the right to contact you and follow-up questions. We will move on to just summarize the root causes that we identified today through our processes, through our analysis activities, were that people don't understand and cannot see substructures, so they don't make a connection on how their work may impact those substructures, and that the general contractor responsible for enforcing law may not be enforcing it, so informing the subcontractors of their role and responsibility. At this time, I would like to ask Member Johnson and Member Clausen if they have any closing remarks.
No, well, thanks, Jessica. I now have a new fear of technology, so that's one big thing. We go to workshop and they got that, and I hit the door. But I want to thank everyone for participating and joining us on this workshop. I want to definitely thank staff, Chester, her team. Progress was made today, and I think we're headed in the right direction. I do like the new interactive format where people can speak. We don't have to go backwards and back and forth. So again, thank you. Great job.
Thank you, Member Johnson. Member Clausen.
Yep. Thank you very much to everybody that participated. I think it was great, good information. I actually have a lot of good notes. Again, would like also to thank the staff for putting this together. This was my first one. It was very informative, neat to be a part of. Can't wait to be in person at the next one, and I would encourage more people to be in person if possible. I think a little more can get done that way and a little faster. So hopefully we can get these going a little more to the point that people are in person and it's moving along faster with good information. So thank you everybody very much.
Thank you. That will wrap up quickly. Sign up for social media. You can contact the board via email. That information is available on the website as well. You can also sign up for our emails. There's instructions here. On our website, it is a little hard to find. So go to meetings, participate in meetings, and then you'll find our email list where you can sign up so you get notified of all these public meetings so that you can participate in person. And then 2 upcoming events that we have. Our next board meeting will be July 14th and 15th, and the annual education and outreach meeting will be September 8th and 9th. So watch for more information on those. And with that, we will adjourn.